What's up, everyone? My name's Adam McDormand, and this is Medium Quality. I am not going to wear this hat. That's much better. The Christmas season is officially here, and that means that the radio stations that I don't listen to are playing that annoying Mariah Carey song that I absolutely loathe. The good news is, I actually have some holiday tunes that won't make me want to set my Christmas tree on fire. So in this video, I'm going to show off the Christmas records that I have in my collection. Here are the records that I'm going to be spinning non-stop in the days leading up to Christmas. I'll post links to the Discogs.com entries for each of these vinyl records over on my blog at mediumquality.net, so make sure you check that out when you're finished watching this video. First up, Merry Christmas by Bing Crosby. Now, in my mind, there is no voice that I more closely associate with the Christmas season than Bing Crosby. And for my family, movies like Holiday Inn and White Christmas are essential holiday viewing. And so these songs that are on this record evoke all of the whimsy and wonder of my childhood Christmas, which is basically the best feeling ever. Now, this album is an undeniable classic. Pretty much every song on here is great. You have songs like Silent Night and White Christmas, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, Jingle Bells, and a bunch of other music that's actually really enjoyable to listen to. Now, most of the songs on this album were originally recorded in the early 40s to 7 to 8 RPM shellac records, which is a format that's long since been abandoned. And interestingly enough, the original master for the song White Christmas was so popular that they pulled from that master enough times that they actually wore it out, and it's completely unusable. The record company brought Bing Crosby back into the studio, as well as all of the original players that were on that song originally, and tried their very best to recreate it. But for all intents and purposes, that original recording is lost forever, which is crazy to me that we could essentially lose something as important as that particular Christmas song. I snagged this record for about $3 or $4 at my local record store this summer. Of course, no one in Phoenix is thinking about holiday cheer when it's over 100 degrees outside, so I didn't exactly have to fight off a huge crowd to pull this out of the bins. There's a little bit of surface noise on this record, but it plays through pretty nicely, and I don't mind a little bit of crackle and hiss on a record like this because it kind of reminds me a little bit of a low-burning fire in a fireplace. This is such a great album that there is no way that I'm going to give this thing up. Not unless someone brings me that really nice Newberry Comics exclusive pressing that kind of looks like a candy cane. But this is, in my mind, absolutely essential Christmas listening. Next up, the Beach Boys Christmas album. Now, I made a video about this album about 2 years ago, and it's actually a pretty decent one. So instead of repeating absolutely everything I said in that video, I will just post a link, and you should go check that video out because this is a great album. Now, I recognize that this album might not have the cultural significance of Bing Crosby's Merry Christmas, which is truly a treasure. But this album will always hold a very special place in my heart for its upbeat, vintage rock and roll, harmony-drenched sound. And I highly recommend that you dig this out of the bins at your local record store and give this thing a listen because it's quite good. Next up, Dustin Kesrue's This Good Night Is Still Everywhere. This is an album that got reissued in 2014 during a time when I was pretty much snatching up anything that looked interesting to me. I had been a big fan of Thrice, which is the band that Dustin Kesrue was in, but they had essentially broken up a few years prior to this, so I was very much hungry for that kind of sound and picked this up without giving any consideration as to what it might actually sound like. This is a limited second pressing of about 500, pressed on this really gorgeous blue vinyl with kind of a white, snowy marbling in the middle. But I don't much care for this album, and I want to talk about why. This album consists of about 12 songs, the majority of which are these really stripped down, country, blues-inspired songs that are generally the opposite of the sort of thing that I would be interested in listening to. In fact, this album, which was originally released in 2010, is even more stripped down than Dustin Kesrue's other solo record that was released in 2007, Please Come Home, which is an album that I briefly enjoyed before realizing that I actually didn't. Now, I don't want to hate on this album too much because there is one song on here that I like quite a bit. This Is War, which is actually structured very similarly to the rest of the songs on this album, but it adds a little bit of electric guitar and a little bit of drums in a way that adds some much needed dynamics to this song. Unfortunately, though, it's just one song in the middle of the B-side of the record, and I'm not going to spin this entire album just to hear one song that I like amidst a handful of other songs that just don't really do much for me. Again, this is a really great album, just not for me. And maybe I'll sell it or something. Next up, David Bazan's Dark Sacred Night. This album is also a batch of stripped-down renditions of classic Christmas songs. It came out in 2016, and I snatched it up immediately as well. Now, in most of these songs, there's even less going on than the songs that are on Dustin Kesrue's album. Pretty much just guitar and vocals, with some subtle use of effects. I just happen to like this one quite a bit more. And I think that's because David Bazan pulls off the whole minimalist aesthetic a lot better than Dustin Kesrue does. There's less of a gap between this kind of minimalist indie folk Christmas thing and what David Bazan normally does. And to my ear, the vocal performances on this album have a lot more dynamics to them, enough to be really engaging, while leaving some interesting negative space in the songs that works mostly to the benefit of the music as a whole. This is a limited press of 2000 on blue vinyl with a white splatter in it. It's hard to get a good sense for just how gorgeous this pressing is just by looking at it on this video. It's almost like snow falling in the dusk sky as the sun goes down. It's really beautiful. In my mind, the music on this album manages to sound very consistent given the fact that this is 10 songs taken from 7 different singles released over the course of about 8 years, both from Pedro the Lion and David Bazan as a solo act. So if you think about it, that's 7 singles with 2 songs each. That should be 14 tracks, right? I managed to come across this thing at my local Zia Records shortly around the time that other album was released. And this is David Bazan's Christmas bonus, which has the other 4 songs that would not have fit on the other album. This also is on a really cool colored press. It's all 4 songs on one side of the vinyl, and then on the other side, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there is a Christmas wreath etched into this side of the record, which is a really cool kind of novelty. Overall, I really enjoy this collection of songs, but not as a substitute for my Christmas classics. As much as I enjoy David Bazan's kind of introspective singer-songwriter thing, I prefer my holiday tunes to be a little more upbeat. There's a melancholy on this album that I find really compelling and emotionally resonant, just not with the emotions that I associate with the birth of Christ. Quality records, not my go-to Christmas listening. Next up, A Capital Christmas. This is a compilation of classic Christmas tunes that came out in 2016, and I purchased this when I realized that my collection was sorely lacking in Christmas classics. I don't think that any one song on this album is particularly nostalgic for me. It's more of the totality of what's presented on this collection. Christmas is the one time of the year where I find myself compelled to listen to lounge singing crooners and big band jazz. And the music that's on here is quite good. The collection has 24 songs from notable Capitol Records artists from the 40s, 50s, and 60s across 2 LPs. You have your Nat King Cole, your Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra. So like these musical heavy hitters singing Christmas classic songs that are undeniably recognizable and just full of holiday cheer. I actually spent a bit of time on Amazon today trying to find a better compilation of Christmas classics than this one. And there really isn't anything out there that matches what's on this particular collection. And it's only about $25. Capitol did put out a second volume of this collection this year, but most of the songs are deeper cuts, so they're going to be far less iconic, probably less recognizable than the stuff that's on here. However, if you listen to this whole thing and you're like, wow, this is great and I really want more, there is a Capitol Christmas Volume 2 that is arguably of equal quality. If all you need is a great collection of Christmas classics, then I highly recommend picking this one up. Okay, last, but certainly not least, the Vince Guaraldi Trio's Charlie Brown Christmas soundtrack. This is quintessential holiday music for me, right up there alongside Bing Crosby and the Beach Boys' Christmas album. Now, over the past couple of years, I've been learning to appreciate jazz. So as much as this carries a nostalgia for my childhood holidays, my enjoyment of this purely as a jazz record is relatively fresh. Guaraldi's playing on this album is dynamic and expressive, and the accompanying drums and upright bass are these perfect instrumental additions to what is otherwise some pristine piano work. It would be very difficult for me to listen to this album on Christmas morning and not feel this wash of joy and whimsy that's very much associated with Christmas time for me. It's kind of difficult for me to disassociate the music that's on this album from the Charlie Brown Christmas special. The program's so iconic, it's so memorable, and the music so perfectly suits the whole experience that the two are inextricably linked together in my mind. But that only adds to what I think is already an album that I can't recommend highly enough. It's basically a flawless execution, both musically and thematically. And there you have it. That is 6 1/2 Christmas albums on vinyl. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And while you're down there, leave me a comment and let me know what are some of your essential Christmas tunes that you love listening to on vinyl every year. And until next time, Merry Christmas. What a time to be alive.